All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today, we're basically going to take everything you thought you knew about human psychology and control and completely flip it on its head. We're breaking down the incredibly fascinating work of best-selling author Robert Greene, and we're taking a journey right into the raw, completely unvarnished realities of human nature.
And to kick things off, there was this Malcolm X quote that absolutely hits the nail on the head. Absolute power corrupts, but absolute powerlessness corrupts even more. You know, we spend so much time worrying about the dangers of having too much power. But Greene argues that the feeling of absolute powerlessness, that awful sensation where you have literally zero influence over your life, your boss, or your future, that is actually what pushes people into toxic, passive-aggressive, and manipulative behaviors. It's just a completely miserable state to be in.
So let's start by redefining true power and see how we move away from that dread of helplessness.
When we hear the word power, our brains almost always jump straight to geopolitical dominance, right? We picture presidents, powerful CEOs crushing the competition, but Greene completely reframes this whole concept. He says true power is actually deeply, deeply internal. It's that profound feeling of self-control. It's your ability to shape your own everyday life, to influence the people you work with without ever having to force them, and honestly, to just master your own impulses. Because think about it, if you can't even control yourself, how on earth can you expect to control anything else around you?
Moving right along to Section 2, Embracing Your Dark Side. To get that internal control, we have to stop pretending we all walk around with halos over our heads.
Okay, well, I want to throw a slightly controversial question your way. Is narcissism actually a good thing? We're so conditioned to think of narcissism as this inherently evil, entirely toxic flaw. But Greene points out that, look, every single human being has self-absorbed traits. It's inescapable. We simply cannot override our primate hardwiring.
To really get this, we have to talk about healthy narcissism. Think back to early childhood. There's this moment when we first realize that our parents can't actually give us 100% of their attention 24 hours a day. And honestly, that is a profound shock to the system. To survive that realization, we have to build up a foundational layer of self-love. We literally have to learn how to self-soothe and generate internal self-esteem so we can handle rejection later on. The people who never manage to develop this healthy layer of inner self-esteem, they're actually the ones who become incredibly toxic as adults. They're constantly demanding all this dramatic attention and validation from everyone else, purely because they can't provide it for themselves.
So the big takeaway here is this. You have to take that self-love and turn it outward into deep empathy. Once you admit that yes, you have a dark side, a shadow, some natural aggression, you don't run away from it. You take that immense, raw energy and you channel it. You use it for positive creations, genuine empathy, and to build up the people around you instead of tearing them down.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the rules of seduction. Let's see how this internal mastery actually builds the foundation for how we connect.
Seduction gets a really bad rap. It's usually misunderstood as some kind of cheap, manipulative parlor trick. But Greene argues it's actually a super high form of power. See, a lot of us approach connection from a place of insecurity. We get completely stuck in our own heads, worrying endlessly about how we look, and keeping our defenses way up. True seduction is the exact opposite. It requires profound vulnerability. It means genuinely opening up to another person and being willing to just let go of your ego for a minute. You have to be outer directed. You act like a sponge, completely absorbing the other person's energy, their history, their needs, rather than just obsessing over yourself.
And if you want to know what absolutely destroys that kind of connection, watch out for these anti-seductive traits. Things like preaching and moralizing at people, being cheap, and I don't just mean refusing to pick up the check, I mean being cheap with your time and your spirit, having this intense inward focus. And honestly, one of the worst offenders is this modern idea that putting actual effort into a date or a relationship is somehow fake or manipulative. Seduction is a mating ritual. If you show zero effort, you're just signaling a cheapness of spirit and showing you really aren't that interested.
There's this fantastic story about the legendary actor Errol Flynn that really grounds this idea. A woman he was courting once described his sheer magnetism, and she said he was so incredibly relaxed, it was almost as if she had drunk 2 martinis just sitting next to him. That right there, that ease, that total lack of tension, that is the ultimate goal. True magnetism doesn't come from, memorizing some script or trying way too hard. It naturally radiates from a deeply relaxed, secure spirit that just makes the other person feel instantly at home.
So, how do we actually build that kind of unshakable, relaxed confidence? Well, it comes from real competence. That brings us to Section 4, the journey to mastery.
We are fed this modern myth all the time that you just need to find your passion and bam, success will instantly follow. But Greene lays out a much more grounded, realistic process. Step 1 is deep observation. You become a quiet sponge, soaking up the rules, the politics, and the culture of whatever field you're in. Step 2 is skill acquisition. You learn by actually doing the work with your hands, leaning into the challenge instead of hiding from it. And step 3? That's enduring the absolute tedium it takes to reach those legendary 10,000 hours. I mean, think about Stevie Wonder. Blind since childhood, he didn't just magically wake up a master. He spent thousands and thousands of hours doing the most incredibly boring, repetitive finger exercises on the piano long before he was famous. He had to push through years of pure monotony to build up that subconscious mastery before he could become the improvisational, transcendent genius we know today. That is the actual blueprint for mastery.
Now, as you master your craft, you also have to master reading the world around you. Let's dive into Section 5, Decoding Body Language.
We rely so much on spoken words, but let's be honest, words are incredibly easy to manipulate. We use them to flatter, to deceive, and to just outright lie. But your body language? It is terrible at keeping secrets. It's a primal communication channel. The tiny quiver in a nervous voice, the stiff tension you see in a fake smile, compared to the warm eye crinkling of a real one, or even just noticing that someone's feet are pointing toward the door because they desperately want to leave the conversation. These primal, nonverbal cues completely bypass our conscious filters. They reveal what we're actually thinking.
Okay, you absolutely have to hear this incredible story about the Milton Erickson method. Milton Erickson was a brilliant psychologist, but when he was just 19 years old, he got polio and was entirely paralyzed. Imagine being a teenager, totally trapped inside your own body, to the point where the only thing you could physically move were your eyeballs. To fight off this crushing, mind-numbing boredom while his family and nurses were in his room, he didn't just give up. Instead, he spent all day, every single day, intensely studying their microexpressions. He'd watch how their breathing changed, how tiny facial muscles twitched, how their posture shifted. He literally mastered the silent language of the human body out of sheer survival. He eventually recovered enough to become one of history's absolute greatest readers of human intent and a total pioneer in modern therapy.
Erickson's story of paralysis brings us quite poignantly to the emotional climax of our explainer, Section 6, Confronting Absolute Powerlessness. We're going to bring Robert Greene's analytical theories crashing right into his own tragic reality.
See, in 2018, the guy who literally wrote the book on power strategies suddenly lost all of his own. In May of that year, Greene was just utterly exhausted after finishing the grueling process of writing his massive book on human nature. Then in July, he got this completely random wasp sting that caused a severe allergic reaction, which forced him onto a new blood pressure medication. And then in August, this perfect storm of physical stress peaked, and he suffered a massive stroke while driving his car. Just like that, in a flash, the entire left side of his body was permanently paralyzed.
Suddenly, Greene had to take all these big, abstract, historical ideas about powerlessness and ground them into a devastatingly simple daily reality. Try to imagine this for a second. It suddenly takes you 10 full minutes just to tie your own shoes. His entire independence, his ability to go for morning swim, to hike, to effortlessly type out his sprawling books, was just completely stripped away overnight.
Greene later reflected on this massive shift in his perspective, and he said, "I look out my window and I see people walking their dog. God, that must be so great just to walk your dog down the street." He experienced this deep, humbling vulnerability. And through that, he found this visceral, newfound empathy for people who live their whole lives in states of physical helplessness, chronic illness, or deep poverty.
He leaves us with this really stark, poignant commentary on human resilience. He says, please don't take it for granted. Understand that the ability that you have now to run, to walk, to type can be taken away from you. It is such a powerful reminder of just how fragile our physical power really is.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. And I want to leave you with a real thought experiment here. If your physical power, your health, and your ability to control your outward life just vanished tomorrow, what internal strength would remain? Would you still have that healthy self-esteem, those deep observation skills, and the quiet resilience to keep going? Thanks so much for exploring the mind of Robert Greene with us today. Take this knowledge and use it to build an internal foundation that absolutely no circumstance can ever take away.